This is VH2AM, keeping things ticking over.
With the possibility of the NRMA becoming listed on the stock exchange, a lot of people have been asking, what's the share market all about? How does it work? Well, the NRMA buys and sells shares of other companies all the time as part of their investments. So, to help us understand what it is all about, I've come to the fourth floor of Clarence Street to talk with our General Manager of Financial Services, Adrian Rees. G'day, Adrian.
Hi, David. How are you?
I suppose that experience that we've got in all this immense investment we do will help us if we go through with a float.
Certainly, David. I suspect one of the reasons I was probably nominated to work on this project was in fact because of my background on the investment side and knowing what shares are and how they work.
So, as a nation, why do we need a share market?
A share market is basically a place where people who need capital to invest in a business and make it grow and generate jobs and wealth, etc., can come together with people who have money to invest and provide the capital for those sorts of opportunities. And it's really just a way of getting the people who need money together with the people who have it.
And so what percentage of Australians would invest some of their money in the share market?
Somewhere between about 10 and 15% of Australian individuals invest in the share market. In Australia, most money invested in the share market is done by organisations like ours or by the big life insurance companies or other investors.
So what does attract both the individual and, of course, companies, as you say, to the share market? What's in it for them?
Well, there's really two key things you get from investing in shares. The first is the chance for those shares to increase in value, which is what we call capital gain, and also the opportunity to receive income from those shares, which are what dividends are, where you get a payment from the company every year, hopefully.
Right. What about the NRMA? What percentage or how much do we of our reserves put into the share market?
The NRMA as a whole invests about $4,500 or $5,000 million in total, and about $1,750 million of that is invested in shares in the Australian share market.
And the other? What sort of things?
The bulk of the rest of it is invested in things like government bonds, telecom bonds, those sorts of things.
Right, which doesn't have the element of risk.
That's right. Shares have the opportunity to both increase in value, but of course they can go down as well, and that's obviously part of the risk of investing in shares. But in the long term, it's quite clear that you generally do better from shares than you do from other forms of investment.
Right. Maybe at a later tape I'd like to come back and talk a little bit about how the NRMA operates in particular, but I think at this time we might take up what we started on, and that is that people use a lot of jargon. They use words that we struggle to understand, and I'm wondering if we might just run through a few of those and to help me understand what all this share issue is about. You use the word dividend, so how would you define that?
Well, a dividend basically is a bit like interest you get from having a bank account. It's basically an amount of money that a company pays on its shares every year. It's usually a percentage of the value of the shares, and it's basically a cheque that you get in the mail, hopefully once a year or even twice in some cases.
Who decides how much that dividend would be?
The board of a company basically decides how much of their profits they keep and how much of them they pay out in the form of dividends.
Keeping some for the good of the company versus giving some back to those who've invested the money.
Exactly. It's rare for a company to pay out all its profits in dividends because they need to reinvest some of those profits in the future of the business. But typically, probably around 60 or 70% of a company's profits are paid out as dividends.
All right. I've heard the expression franked and unfranked dividends. What does that mean?
Well, that's a scheme that was introduced by the government some years back. Basically, the principle is that because a company has already paid tax on its profits, the theory is that when a dividend is paid to a shareholder, the shareholder shouldn't again have to pay tax on that income. So a dividend that's been paid by a company that's already paid tax is effectively tax-free in the hands of the investor.
So if I get a franked one, I'm better off because I don't have to add any of my tax.
Exactly. In fact, if you've got more franking credit, as it's called, than the dividend is worth, you can actually share that or offset that against the rest of your income, which is quite nice.
All the better. A share register?
A share register is just a fancy name for a list of all the shareholders in a company. Right. The NRMA already, in fact, has something like a share register. Our membership record is effectively a share register, a list of all our members. It's the same sort of thing.
Okay, I've heard now, leading up to, if we do float, preparing a prospectus. What does that mean?
Well, a prospectus is a document that's required by law to be prepared by a company when it wants people to take up its shares. And basically it requires a lot of work to be done to provide all the information that someone would need to make an assessment as to whether or not they should take up a company's shares.
Right. I remember when the float proposal was first announced, there were some things that could be said and couldn't be said because of the legalities, and that's bound very much in prospectuses?
That's right. The Australian Securities Commission, the ASC, is the government regulatory body that looks after this area, and they have very strict rules on how much information you can give out about a company and its future prospects, if you like, before you have a prospectus which contains all the financial and other information that someone would need. So you can't go around saying a company is going to have a terrific prospect in the future when you haven't actually demonstrated that in black and white in a prospectus.
So we can't get carried away.
Exactly. It's purely intended to make sure that shonky people don't go around raising money for investment schemes that aren't really worthwhile. It's to protect the average investor.
Yeah, good thing. The measurement of how the share market is going generally, that is by the All
Ordinaries Index.
Right.
It's basically, if you like, a compilation of all the different shares in the market, the major shares, and they just work out an index every day, and it's either gone up or down depending on how prices have been.
As you say, it's the major one. Would NRMA become part of the All Ords, do you think, if it was voted?
Certainly. The NRMA would represent about 1% of the entire Australian share market if the NRMA was listed, so it would be a very big part of the market.
Yeah, so they'd have to include that in there.
Certainly.
A few more general terms one reads around. A bullish market.
Well, yeah, bullish and bearish are things you hear quite a lot. Bullish basically means the market's going up or it's strong. Bearish means the market's going down or it's weak.
A bull in a china shop means it's going...
Something like that. I think the derivation is, people rampaging around or running around going a bit crazy, pushing share prices up, and I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, so we can get a little too bullish.
That's right.
I've heard that expression. Perhaps just the last question then. On the news, in the newspapers, we see other stock exchanges reported, the Tokyo, the New York and that. Why do we report? Why are we so interested in that? And how can something that's happening overseas there affect us as a general stock exchange here? How does that work?
Well, I think, David, the situation today in the financial markets is that there really is one worldwide financial market. There's incredible use of technology now in all the share markets around the world, and there is pretty much instant communication from one market to another.
Right.
So, for example, and largely the same sorts of investors are operating in all the markets around the world. So that if there's a reason why a major market of the world, like the New York market, which in fact represents about a quarter of the whole world's share market,
right?
If something goes wrong in that market or it goes up, then obviously that's going to have ramifications everywhere else, because everybody is always comparing the merits of investing in one market against another. So, people can move money around the world almost at will.
So that's, I guess, like a confidence. Is that
very.
If New York's feeling pretty toey, that gives general confidence anyway?
Yeah, share markets are very much based around confidence and sort of intangible things like that, as well as also the financial analysis. And if markets, for example, are concerned about government policies and what governments are doing at a particular point in time, they could become a little unsettled and markets will fall.
Well, of course, a government policy on something to do with trade may be an example of how it might feed back to Australia.
Certainly, and particularly in the case, say, of the US, which is a very big part of Australia's trading, if they announce a policy which, in fact, means they'll be importing less things from Australia, that has a big impact on the Australian economy, and that in turn means things are probably not quite so rosy for Australian companies.
So it might be up in New York but down in Australia.
It can happen.
Yeah.
Typically, we tend to follow the other major markets. If they're up, we tend to go up as well.
Okay, just to finalise then, we've talked about the prospectus as a need to give that out. Often that's seen as so that people investing their money have a clear picture. Yet in our case, we're giving it away, or we propose to give it away. That doesn't make any difference? We still need the prospectus?
No, I think we've certainly talked to the Australian Securities Commission, and I think certainly their view is that because there's a very large amount of value represented by the NRMA shares, if this proposal goes ahead, it's certainly desirable for people to get all the information they would need in the same form they'd regularly get it. And a prospectus is a well-proved and tried way of conveying that information. And it's just a lot easier, I think, for the whole process to go down that sort of route rather than try to do something different.
Yes, and so to help us in the voting to make a clear judgment.
Yeah, it'll give everybody all the information they need to make the decision about which way they would vote on the proposal, and give quite a lot of information about the NRMA's prospects and how it will go in the future.
Adrian, you've helped me understand what appears to be often a very complex thing, but in defining that's been greatly helpful. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David. Happy to talk to you in the future.
Okay.
Here's another NRMA handy hint.
Mark, what have you got for us this time?
The next one I've got, David, is in relation to an EA Falcon with central fuel injection.
Right.
The problem with this particular vehicle was the engine was starting okay, but stalling as soon as you let the ignition key to the run position.
Right.
We've had a lot of inquiries from many patrols who've had a very, very similar problem to this, and they probably more so related to the old early ignition systems with a ballast resistor. If the ballast resistor was blown, very, very similar problem. Anyway, the cause of the problem we found out has been through the thick film ignition module. And I'd just like to remind the guys that if they have a look back in the January 1994 Hot from the Exhaust, they'll find an article pertaining to this problem.
But this nonetheless is a problem that they can't fix up on the spot. They'd have to get a tow?
It's basically getting that way, David. However, there is a team out in the Western Zone, the A team, who is currently looking at different parts to be carried in the van.
Yeah, so if they don't have the part, it's got a tow, but as you say, the team's looking at what sort of parts they might carry around.
Yes, well, who knows what can happen in the future.
Oh, that's great, mate. All right, thanks very much, Mark.
Radio is everywhere with the people. Everyone listens to radio. Working girls listen to a favorite baritone.
Businessmen listen, relaxing at home.
Radio is everywhere with the people.
Through town and country, the programs flow.
Working people listen.
Business people listen.
Everyone listens to radio.
Well, for many years, one of the great voices of Sydney radio has been that of Gary O'Callaghan, but he also has been a great voice for the NRMA. Clearly, he loves the organisation and has supported it in many years. I've been very fortunate to be interviewed by him on many occasions, and so it's a great opportunity that I welcome him now. G'day, Gary.
G'day, David. It's a bit of a switch around. You're talking to me. Yes, I like that.
I get to ask the questions.
That's
this
right,
time.
yes. I don't know about the answers, but the questions I know will be good.
Somehow I think you'll cope with those greatly. What was your first car?
My first car was I guess a 50 model. It would have been Ford Prefect, little green upright model.
Yeah, the old Prefect?
Yes, actually owned by Frank Hyde, who was a football commentator at 2SM, had just started there at that stage. And I was getting married and he was about to buy a new car, and I thought, this is my big opportunity.
Big opportunity.
So I bought it. Was, as I say, an upright model, a lovely olivey green colour, 3 on the floor.
Right, yeah.
Second gear was always a bit of a problem. You'd be going up the Spit Hill and it'd fly out and hit you in the kneecap, you know. You knew you'd got to sort of 50 miles an hour when you couldn't see anything out of the rear vision mirror because it vibrated so much.
Oh, I thought it might have been the smoke as well.
Yeah, that too, yeah. Great motor car, though.
Did you join the NRMA then? Did it ever let you down?
I joined the NRMA the second day I'd owned the car. I picked it up at 6 o'clock one evening and went out to visit my wife-to-be. I lived at Waverton and I was on my way to Arncliffe, and it suddenly just stopped, as I guess so many second-hand cars bought privately do, you know. And,
particularly in that time.
Yeah. So I pulled into the side of the Princes Highway at Tempe and took my tuppence and went over to the telephone box and joined the NRMA on the phone. I forget how much it cost me. But I thought it was a pretty dud show, actually, because I'd invested all this money before the fellow opened the bonnet when he finally arrived. Yeah. And he looked inside and said, "Where's the carburettor?" And I said, "Hell, I don't know. That's why I joined the NRMA, don't you know?" And he said, "I know where it ought to be, but where is it?" So we found the bowl back about 60 feet up the highway and it dropped off.
So it got you going there.
Yes, that was my number one call.
Of course, you did a lot of time on morning radio. That must have been a battle getting up in the morning, mustn't it?
Yeah, from 1956 for 30 years.
Right.
Yeah, I used to bound out of bed at 3:30 and be on the road at about 4:15 for a 5 o'clock start at 2UE. And the station gave me a two-way radio for the motor vehicle in the days when two-ways were, you know, fairly uncommon. And for reasons best known to whoever decided that that was the way it would be, it was connected through to the battery that also started my motor car. Yeah. And they were a fair drain, all valves in those days. And I was forever getting flat batteries. And I I would say the NRMA was responsible on no less than 20 occasions for getting me to work on time, because you'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and rush out and start the car and nothing would happen.
Right.
And you got to know the patrolman on the all-nighter very well.
First name terms.
Yeah, he used to say, Gary, would you mind in future parking your car backwards into your carport, because otherwise it's too difficult to get everything up to the front.
When did you first go into radio? Was the breakfast the first, or you?
No, I started in 51. I actually used to go on a program called Rumpus Room on 2UE, which was even prior to Howard Craven. A fellow called Bill Maloney started it, and that would have been about 1945, I guess, 46.
Right. Just after the war.
Yeah, and then I went to 2SM as an office boy, and I lasted there about 6 months as the office boy, when fortunately the newsreader collapsed just prior to the bulletin one day, and I got to read the news when I was 17, I guess.
Is that right?
And that was the start of it, and I was there for about 6 years, and then I went to 2UE, where I spent 30-odd doing the breakfast program.
Is that right? You've been at the right place at the right time.
That's what it's all about, I think, or it was then anyhow. Yeah.
I guess, you've always been a great supporter of the NRMA. You must have seen the organisation and that remain part of the Sydney and New South Wales life?
Yeah, tell me what it is, because I can't understand it, but there are so many organisations that would like to be the NRMA. Yeah. I know, for instance, the New South Wales Water Police look upon themselves as, apart from the fact that they're rescue and involved in criminal acts and so on, they still look upon themselves and find that the water community looks upon them as being a sort of water-bound NRMA, and they're very proud of that.
Yeah.
You know, there when you're wanted, and everybody's dying to see you arrive.
Yeah, we've become the benchmark.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is. Yeah,
we're very, very proud of that.
Yeah. I mean, the people who are NRMA patrolmen probably wouldn't have that same feeling, in as much that when something happens they probably know how to fix their own car. Yeah. But to be stuck out in the middle of nowhere, to be able to make a phone call and have somebody turn up who's not just going to make your car go again, but also give you a feeling of, I guess, safety, particularly at night time when somebody turns up, you think, thank God, here he comes, you know. Yeah. I don't know what we expect him to do if you do get into trouble, but he does give you that feeling of confidence when he turns up.
And, of course, you're still on radio now.
Yeah, I still work 5:30 till 7 Saturday and Sunday mornings, which is great. And, of course, the NRMA are sponsors of the program, which makes me very proud. Makes me a very proud old announcer.
I think that line's been used. But
it was a good one.
An oldie but a goodie, yeah. Well, that's a great opportunity. And as I understand it, you still have some pretty good listening audiences, even at that time of the morning.
Yeah, well, the audiences are great. But, of course, then you're on just before 7 every so often, and that, of course, increases the audience no end.
If nothing but a diplomat.
Good on you.
Gary, thanks very much.
Thank you, David.
You're on the air with VH2AM.
And now our final helpful hint from Mark Williams, the training development consultant for the patrols out there at Villawood at the Technical Services Training Centre. Mark, one more hint for us. What have you got?
Righto, David. Well, this one was a fairly interesting one, and I received this particular one from one of our Wollongong patrols, Keith David.
Oh, good.
And this one was in relation to a Holden Commodore VR, the latest model Commodore. The particular problem that we had with this one was a loss of power, and also the check engine lamp on the dashboard was coming on and staying on.
Right.
The patrol actually went through the self-diagnosis system to try and extract some fault codes from it.
Oh, good. Did it work?
Yes, he got some codes. He got code 66, 67, 81 and 82. And
sounds terminal.
Yeah, they're all related to the automatic transmission, actually, David. And interesting enough, when it was actually went in a bit further, we found Keith David actually found the cause of the problem was number 12 fuse was blown.
A simple problem.
Yeah, it's a simple problem. The fuse actually is within the voltage supply circuit to the automatic transmission shift solenoids.
Right.
and of course if there's no voltage supply to the solenoids, it's going to cause those particular problems.
No, it's just located with the usual bunch of fuses?
Yes, directly underneath the steering column there is a fold-down panel, and once you fold that panel down you'll find all the fuses are located and easily marked.
Oh, it's good that one of our patrols did send that in to us, and we're always happy to report them.
Oh, it's very encouraging to see the patrols actually sending in information like that. It's great that we can actually share that information with the rest of the patrol force and, of course, the vehicle inspection people. Codes were 66, 67, 81 and 82.
And to fix it was simply replacing the fuse?
Replace number 12 fuse, yeah.
VH2AM calling the board, all patrols standing by.
Well, I'm now at Villawood, and Chris Finn, the zone manager for the Western Zone, has come in, and we're going to talk about the road service seminars. G'day, Chris.
David, how are you?
Now, what are you doing? You're putting all this seminar together, are you?
Yeah, I've been charged with the responsibility of organising the 1994 road service seminars.
So that means venue and agenda?
Venue, agenda, and anything else that might go along with it.
So when are they going to happen?
We're holding them this year, as we have in past years, in September, because that's our quiet time, and it will take place on each Tuesday and Wednesday throughout September.
And so the usual thing where any one person will go to one of those days?
That's right.
And you've got 8 altogether to spread the load?
Yeah, well, we've got about 600 people will be attending.
Okay. And so will this be the patrols?
Patrols, vehicle inspectors, because they now come under the umbrella of road service.
So this will be the first time for them?
Yes, it will be indeed, yeah.
And of course, other staff?
Yeah, control room staff, etc., etc.
Okay, that's great. And what sort of... now, they've already heard about that it's happening, haven't they? Patrols and...
Yes, they are aware of it. They've been given the opportunity to provide us some feedback regarding some of the content of the seminars. And we're waiting for that feedback at this time.
So, have you got a theme for the days?
Yeah, we're trying to promote the theme of teamwork, and I mean the concept itself is reasonably new to road service. The structure's in place. We do have team rosters, etc., etc. However, the actual strategy of promoting teamwork is only in its infancy at this time.
Right, so they're getting going on that. So what are some of the subjects that you'd be particularly covering at these seminars?
Well, I think this year, probably the main topic will be probably the Share the Future proposal.
Sure.
Because ultimately I think that is possibly the pinnacle of teamwork, because if it is accepted and goes through, each employee within the NRMA will actually own part of the company. So you will be looking at one massive team.
Yeah. It's real ownership too.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not. What about other areas from the organisation?
Yeah, we've actually sent out a memo seeking expressions of interest from other areas. Now, what we've asked them is if they have had any major accomplishments through teamwork, would they get in touch with us, and maybe they could put together a 30-minute presentation and they could present that to the staff on the day.
So there'd be two things coming out of that, wouldn't there? There would be an example of teamwork and how that works.
Exactly, yeah.
But also an indication of just another area of the organisation and what it does and what it's looking to do for improvement.
That's right, David, yeah.
Yeah. So what about some feedback on team efforts from some of the patrols or vehicle inspections?
Yeah, well, we have had some feedback from both areas. As I mentioned earlier, we did seek their feedback. Now, each area has provided us with some feedback. However, at this point in time, we're still waiting for a little bit more.
Okay, but the other thing is that perhaps at this seminar, as you said earlier, we're just getting going in teamwork in patrols and VI, and those now together. Perhaps in future seminars, we will be seeing more feedback from them on the real results they've achieved. Yeah,
well, I believe that probably down the track that the patrols themselves, patrols, vehicle inspectors and other road service staff will actually assume control of the seminars. They will organise it, put it together, compile the agenda and actually present it. That's basically where we're aiming at. When it happens and where it happens, that remains to be seen.
As it evolves, so you do it.
Yeah.
That sounds to me like a great deal of ownership coming into those seminars too.
Well, I believe that's the way we need to go if we're going to promote teamwork and if we're really going to make sure that the NRMA perpetuates.
Yeah, so teamwork is not just someone standing up and giving a lecture, it's a whole interaction.
Exactly.
The way things go.
Exactly.
Sounds like they should be good things. I look forward to seeing some more detail as they come. Chris, thanks very much.
Thanks, David.
This is VH2AM, the voice of NRMA Road Service, with David Brown.
On our last tape, we talked about a handy hint for a Commodore with low fuel pressure. We mentioned that clamping the fuel line was a method of increasing the fuel pressure to enable the driver to get enough fuel to get to a repairer. I'm not sure that we emphasised enough that this should be used with caution, and only if you're certain that the problem relates to a worn fuel pump, no other component. If it's not a worn fuel pump, any other condition could correct itself and allow excessive fuel pressure to develop, possibly causing extreme flooding and damage to the engine. Well, what a packed program this has been. Thanks again for your feedback. Keep it up. And don't forget the tear-off portion of the cover card, which comes with this cassette, which is a great way to send in any ideas you may have. You might even think about sending in a question that you think is important. I guarantee we'll get the right person to answer it quickly. You can even remain anonymous if you like. And so until next time, on behalf of Ted Dent, I'm David Brown. Thanks for listening.